Hello, welcome back to the Inside Elland Road podcast with me, Joe Donoghue, and YAP chief football writer, Graham Smith. Leeds were beaten at Blackburn, but it's back to the grind this weekend as Derby County come to Elland Road. An out-of-sorts performance at Ewood Park, perhaps explained by the fact it was Leeds' third game in 6 days post-international break, whereas Blackburn were comparably well-rested after their game with Portsmouth had been postponed a week earlier. It wasn't exactly straightforward off the pitch either, as my co-host Graham can attest, getting caught up in all sorts of rail-related delays and mayhem at Blackburn Station, which really begs the question, should Leeds just get out of this division and stop going to Blackburn altogether?
Yes, I think we should cancel next year's trip to Blackburn and consider never going there again. I think that would be the simplest. That would just be best for all. That way, Blackburn don't need to worry that they're going to let down 7,500 fans by not selling them beer and pie. Then Northern Rail don't have to bother, with a fourth carriage, bringing out that difficult fourth carriage. And British Transport Police don't have to send a load of bobbies to stand in a great big line and hold people for 90 minutes in the entrance hall of a train station instead of letting them up to the platform in a bit more space. Yeah, a grim day out in Lancashire. It was, all told. Not enjoyable, really, from start to finish. And I can't think, maybe you'll be able to, but I can't think of a single redeeming feature.
I think the redeeming feature is that's it. That's Blackburn done this year. Do not have to go back there. Oh, wait, hold on. Northern Rail is definitely going to be on the agenda again in, what is it? A few weeks? Less than a few weeks. Next weekend.
In a week and a bit, yeah.
Preston away, which is exactly the same part of the world. So
lessons will be learned, Joe. There's many lessons. We love to learn lessons. Lessons are great, and we just really want to provide a great service for all our customers. We love our customers. We love them. Love them so much we want to get them all in to 3 carriages. Blackburn, let's discuss transport briefly. For the second year running, here we are on the Inside On Road podcast, slamming Northern Rail for a substandard service to and from Blackburn. Last year, you and I, as we've mentioned several times on the pod, not living our best lives, not being our best selves, recovering somewhat from the night before and crammed into a train that was far too full to go to Blackburn. Fast forward a year, lessons have not so much been learned, and lots of people being crammed into trains not stopping at stations, fans having to get out because it was too crammed and get a taxi, or simply forced to get a taxi because the train wouldn't stop. I believe, in the balance of fairness, that the special that they put on was okay, and so some people didn't have issues getting there, which is great. Well done. Maybe we can see that as progress. However, after the game, I was in a taxi on my way to the station from Ewood, and my taxi driver said, lots of jobs popping up from Leeds, or jobs to Leeds, and like Todmorden in various places. And I was like, this does not bode well. This doesn't fill me with glee. I get to the station, and there is a throng of, 400 Leeds fans stood in front of a line of police officers who are barring the way up to the barriers and the platforms. I asked the police officer what was going on. He said, they're holding the Leeds fans. And I was like, well, I need to get a train. He's like, well, yeah, they're going to let them get the train, but when the train's ready. And I was like, no, I'm not going to Leeds. And he went, just go and tell my colleagues then, and they'll let you through. And I went in to the entrance hall and I had a look, and I thought that's going to be a lot easier said than done, because there's 400 people in a space that's not meant to occupy 400 people. To cut a long story short, I ended up near a ramp, or rounding the corner towards a ramp, with far too many other people. A lady with a very small child in front of me trying their best to get through because they weren't going to Leeds either. And for a couple of minutes, honestly, it was very, very stressful and quite scary. And this kid's head was way too close for comfort to a metal barrier. I was alerting a couple of Leeds fans to his presence, and one of the Leeds fans said to me, there's nothing I can do, mate. And he was right, because he was jammed between 2 other bodies and couldn't go anywhere. And it was... You don't want to get hysterical, and you don't want to start throwing around words like crush, because it's very, very emotive in football for a lot of reasons. But this was not a safe situation. A couple of times Leeds fans had tried to climb up the barrier, either to cross it because they were going to stations that weren't Leeds, or because they'd had enough, or because they wanted to speak to a police officer. And a couple of times they were shoved back down. And one of those could have quite easily landed on this kid or on me or on any number of people with mobility issues. There was an elderly Leeds fan ahead of me who said he simply couldn't wait any longer. He needed to go to the toilet. So he was going to try and push his way forward. It just was not a good situation. And it has been nigh on impossible to ascertain who made the decision to keep the Leeds fans there. And when I got up to the platforms, there was ample room for people on the platforms. Yes, they would have had to be managed. And yes, when the train started to arrive, they would have had to work very hard to keep people behind the yellow line and to stop overcrowding. But there was space on the platforms, and it made very, very little sense to me that they were held for 90 minutes. There was no there was an attempt at an explanation from a Northern Rail employee, and Northern Rail say that he was met with verbal and physical assaults. Now, we have no details of the assaults. I didn't see anyone assaulted. Someone has suggested to me that a coin was thrown in his direction. I don't know if it hit him, but he then duly gave up trying to give announcements, which is probably fair enough. Went back up towards the platforms. There was no tannoy announcement. The police didn't make an announcement. So these fans were held there in relative ignorance as to what was going on. And since then, Northern have intimated to me that it would have been a police decision to hold the Leeds fans. The police have said any questions about station management should be directed to the station owner, but British Transport Police are still yet to comment on the entire situation or any arrests that were made. Northern have said sorry, but their statement was mostly about their employee and appealing for more information about that assault on him. All in all, a shambles, and with Preston just around the corner for another early kickoff, I would just encourage as many people as possible to think about alternative transport to getting the train, which is a sad and dire statement, really.
It's just not good enough, is it? It's just, I mean, it's what I said to you afterwards when, all was said and done and, you were onto the train safely. And I gather that the majority of the Leeds fans who were caught up in that were also, back home, all safe, and hopefully not too affected by what had gone on. It's not about, the fact that fans were inconvenienced for the best part of 2 hours. It's not ideal, but it's not about that. It's also not about football fans not being given an explanation, being treated with prejudice as though they're some violent thugs, and that they're being herded like cattle, treated like second-class citizens yet again. And it's not just Leeds fans; it happens to fans of many, many clubs. And again, that is a conversation for a different day, because whether it's policing, whether it's the rail network, whether it's just unfair expectations on for all football supporters being tarred with the same brush, that is a problem in England. And I couldn't speak to Scotland or Wales or anywhere, but certainly in England we've experienced that. It's not about that either. It's about safety, and no one in that situation you could describe as being safe. Can you imagine if, for example, somebody had fainted in the middle of that, the melee of bodies in the sort of the concourse area? How would you expect to get some sort of medical help in there?
Yeah, there were areas of it that there was space, but there was a lot of really, really cramped and tight spaces. And I saw one Leeds fan leading his tearful girlfriend back out of the crowd. I think she was finding it a bit too much. For anyone with anxiety issues, it would have been a complete and utter nightmare. It was very unpleasant. And then just to kind of round it all off, a journey that I began at 4:30, eventually ended at 10:30 at my home in Sheffield. It took 6 hours to get back from Blackburn, which is no encouragement whatsoever to not take the car and to use public transport. It's just a farce. So yeah, bring on Preston North End away from home early on a Saturday.
Yeah, that is not an enviable journey. I think anyone's going to want to be making. Certainly if it's the same as Preston last year, which was on Boxing Day, and saw Leeds beaten 2-1, as there were some theatrics by Osmajic, the striker, and Melia was sent off. So hopefully not a repeat of that. In general, what did you make of the Blackburn game on the pitch? They just looked a bit jaded. It was one game too many.
Yeah, I think so. They weren't really on the front foot to begin with, and they struggled physically. I think they struggled to get to the first ball, they struggled to get to the second ball, and in doing so, they gave away free kicks, and they lost out in the physical battle. That's what Farke pointed to when he was explaining the defeat. He says that's where it was lost, in the duels early on. But on the ball, they just weren't quite on it either. And you have to give Blackburn their dues. It wasn't a case of Blackburn bullying Leeds. Blackburn were very dangerous themselves, and they had Tyrese Dolan, who was an absolute handful for Leeds. He's the one that won the penalty from Tanaka, who was below par, you'd have to say. And just a few too many players were below par. Junior Firpo, that thing he said to me about the secret to his form had been rhythm and had been playing every game. He gets suspended for 3 games. He comes back and he looks so rusty. And now, as we'll go on to later, he's an injury doubt for the Derby game. So that was a concern. There wasn't too many players who stood out. Willie Gnonto was dangerous in fits and spats, but aside from that, did anyone really stand up and take responsibility? Piru wasn't really a factor. He had that one chance when Ainsley Pears, it was a back pass to Ainsley Pears, wasn't it? That was really wayward, and Piru really could have got there. Had it been Joseph, I think he probably gets there. Piru was a bit more sluggish, didn't show the urgency to get there, and Leeds didn't take their chances. Blackburn took the best chance afforded to them. Probably should have scored 2 others through Todd, the show pony Cantwell, and just a bad day all round for Leeds. Farke's substitutions didn't really do anything to impact the game or to change things. Second half was slightly better in terms of urgency going forward, but the quality wasn't there. Final ball sometimes wasn't there, or the anticipation of the final ball wasn't there. Just too many players not on it. Wasn't good. And Blackburn, to their credit, were good.
Yeah, it felt as though they were very street smart as well, Blackburn, as opposed to Leeds maybe not being, I don't know, you wrote something in the week, didn't you, about not having their Ampadu, and whereas Blackburn did. And I suppose that takes us on nicely to today's team news, the press conference that Daniel Farke hosted on Thursday afternoon, where he kind of rather unexpectedly, we know he's been ahead of schedule, Ampadu, but he still rather unexpectedly dropped that, oh, by the way, Ethan Ampadu is back in full team training, and he has been all week. It's like, oh, right, okay, that's very ahead of schedule. I think a lot of us were expecting him to be back playing in the new year. But with how many games there are over the Christmas period, I think it's 6 before the new year, you'd expect him to be back in the starting 11 and settled by the time that 2025 rolls around, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think that's probably the situation that we're looking at. I think the most promising thing is that he's back in team training and he's shown that he can handle the load. There hasn't been a reaction or a setback. It seems to have all gone very, very well, touch wood. And Farke saying that he would even consider involving Ampadu earlier than mid to late December is a very, very good sign. I mean, let's wait and see for the weekend. I wonder if the weekend might just be a bit too soon. But even the fact that he might be on the bench in and around it, doing the warm-up and doing the little bits at half-time, just getting back into the rhythm of a match day would be a boost for Leeds. Having him around the squad as the club captain, another leadership character, another voice, would be a good thing for Leeds. And then Farke can start to bring him in, can't he? He can give him 5-10 minutes here, maybe increase it to 20 minutes, maybe get him half an hour, and then he's knocking on the door, isn't he? And for me, as soon as he's ready to start, he starts. There haven't been too many occasions when we've said, God, they're really missing Ampadu. But when they miss him, like they missed him at Blackburn, they really miss him. They needed somebody to really grab that game by the scruff and to stand up to the physicality and the antics of some of the Blackburn players. When was the last time we saw an opposition player get such of a rise out of Daniel Farke that Farke, allowed himself to become embroiled in a war of words on the pitch during the handshakes. Like, I don't recall saying that. Do you?
No, Farke's kept his cool throughout, but clearly he was, sufficiently ticked off by what Lewis Travis was doing. And you know what? The majority of it was well within the rules of the game. He played it really well. So naturally, that is going to rile opposition managers up, and Farke's risen to it. I don't think it's a non-story. It's a nothingness. It was over, and it was a mountain over a molehill.
It was, but I think it's indicative of how effective Lewis Travis was, and also how annoyed Farke was by that. What happened in Blackburn? Travis was good for them. He was a shithouse, but he was good, and he was good at it. And Leeds have missed that. Leeds have missed that nastiness. They don't have one. You look at the team at the minute without Ampadu in it. Is anybody engaging in any shenanigans? Is anybody winding up the opposition? Gnonto maybe now and again.
Gnonto does, but in fits and starts.
Yeah.
And certainly not. It's more opposition fans, isn't it, rather than opposition coaches? What Gnonto does.
He draws a lot of fouls, but he doesn't really. Yeah, he doesn't really rustle the opposition, and it's amazing to me still that in 2024, like a player who you would have described as like a rat, a player who rats around the midfield, can still run a game like that, can still run the rhythm of a game, can still draw opposition players into needless confrontations and little arguments in the penalty area that stop a corner from coming in and just slow everything down. Teams just still don't seem to be able to handle that sometimes, and Leeds don't have one until Ampadu comes back.
I'm not drawing comparisons, too explicitly between Ampadu, Travis, and Manchester City's Rodri. But if we're talking about the general trend of unsung heroes, I know he won the Ballon d'Or this year, but I mean, it's not expected that a defensive midfielder wins the Ballon d'Or. We've seen with how out of sorts Man City have been when they've lost their linchpin at the base of midfield. I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that with Ampadu, Leeds do have that. He does, maybe not to the same extent because they've still been able to win games. It still looked good, but there is a certain something that Leeds do lack when Ampadu isn't in the team. And yeah, I mean, when he's back, once he's back into a rhythm and he's feeling himself again, then yeah, I think we'll see that those types of games, the tougher, grittier ones, I think Leeds will probably fare a little bit better in. Because for all of Joe Rothwell's qualities and all of our Tanaka's qualities, you wouldn't say that either of them are the type of player to fly in with crunching tackles to set the tone in midfield. They're very good on the ball. They're, as you put, more class than sass. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see.
He's a front foot defender, isn't he? So I mean, look at how he got injured. Look where he was on the pitch when he got injured, making that challenge. He was on the edge of the opposition box, making a slide challenge because he anticipated a pass and went in through somebody. That's not really Rothwell's game. I've spoken to a number of his ex-coaches and they all brought up unprompted the fact that, does he really relish the physical side of the game? Probably nowhere near as much as he does the technical side. Tanaka actually has shown a bit of steel, but again, he's not a destroyer. He's not an enforcer, is he? He's not the David Batty type or the Calvin Phillips type or the Ethan Ampadu type. So it is something that Leeds have been missing and something that I think Farke probably can't wait to get back into his side.
Have we considered the possibility that if Max Wöber starts this weekend at left back in the place of Junior Firpo, who has got a foot injury that he picked up in training, have we considered that he could perhaps be the Scheißhaus that that Farke was maybe looking for in that Blackburn game?
Could he? Is that his game?
It's not, but he's got defensive qualities. His defensive behaviour, as Farke would put it, he's pretty strong. We haven't really seen him in the Championship, have we? So we haven't really seen him unless you were watching Borussia Mönchengladbach every week last year, which I know for a fact you weren't. You're nodding your head, and you just weren't. I know for a fact you don't watch the Bundesliga. You probably still think Patrick Berger and Kevin Kuranyi play there.
Who?
Yeah, see, there you go. Real Bundesliga appreciators will know what I'm on about. Your Edin Dzeko's, your Graffitis, that 08-09 Wolfsburg team. Yeah, tell you all about it. What do you mean unbelievable?
Just an unbelievable side, Wolfsburg, weren't they? Just the way they dealt with the ball.
Yeah, Zlatko Junuzovic. I can carry on. I won't though. I'd like to see Voba start because I think it's the sort of game which they could probably use someone who is good in the air. They can basically just give license to Bogle to get down that right hand side. Basically, sit into a back three if needs be, out of possession. And maybe have a look and see what Voba's got in his locker as a left back. Because I think a lot of people will need reminding. Who's to say that a player who's played Champions League football, was starting for Austria at the Euros, isn't going to come into this team and say, actually, you know what, I do have a lot of quality, and I'm certainly better than who's going to be right wing for Derby, Nathaniel Mendez-Lang, for example.
Yeah, I think your point about him being good in the air is a good one because Derby will look to profit from set pieces. I also think that Paul Warne will quite unashamedly, given the quality gulf that you would say that exists technically between the two sides, I think he'll come and he'll say, we're not going to play 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3. We're going to play 10-0-0-0. And he's going to have one
10
big
goalkeepers.
Going to have one big. You do include goalkeepers in your formations normally?
That's no, but you put 3 zeros after your 10. So 10 being
0 for the defensive midfield, 0
Oh.
for the centre midfield, and 0 up top. He's going to have a long line of players stretching from one touchline to the other, one singular line of defence. They're going to sit so deep.
We've been burned by predictions on this podcast very recently. Might I
well,
add?
If he plays 4 up top, and if he ends up, if they're in possession and they've got 5 or 6 in the top line, as Wilder said about Leeds, then I will pay you 10 of your English pounds.
It's simply not enough. I'm not going to bite on that. 10 quid.
You couldn't get a bite for that where you live. That's why. It's not enough.
Yeah, just on the wider point of Derby and the style that they're going to adopt, you mentioned that they're going to make the most of set pieces. I wonder where you got that from. Was it perhaps someone highlighting the fact that Derby's 11 of Derby's 22 goals this season, 11 have been scored from set
pieces. Yeah,
there you go. Yeah, is there an echo in here? Honestly, this podcasting lot's difficult when you've got echoes. 11 goals from set pieces. Jerry Yates, their top scorer, with 4. 2 of those have been headers. Curtis Nelson, their joint second top goal scorer, has got 2. Both of those were headers. The Leeds are going to need to stand up to it and just don't give away silly free kicks like they did early on against Swansea. Don't give away corners, which, to be honest, they're usually quite good at. And I don't know. Derby strike me as the type of team that would have a long throw in them.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Paul Warne hadn't said, has anybody got a Rafinha-esque long throw, and had a competition in training.
Having too much fun with that.
Yeah, all right, you've scored 16 goals so far in La Liga and the Champions League, but why are you not using your special trick? Yeah, they'll probably have a long throw expert. It was concerning to me that Blackburn had an early, very decent headed chance from a set piece on Saturday. Was it Hashioka? Headed against the bar, didn't he?
Yeah, it was off the crossbar, yeah.
Headed off the crossbar, and it was far, far too easy for him to win the header. I don't remember Leeds being particularly soft in the air this season as a theme or as a worry. So I would hope that they'll be fine in that regard. But again, bringing it back to your point, Junior Firpo is quite good in the air. So you would be replacing a strength with a strength if Vober came in, because he is good from set pieces. So I'd probably like to see it. And also, I don't imagine that Schmidt is ready for 90 minutes. Well, I know that because Farkas said it today. So it's not going to be him. But there is the chance that it would be Firpo. If Firpo is 90% ready, do you take the risk and play him, knowing that you've got Vober to come off the bench?
No, because you've got Middlesbrough in midweek.
Yeah, good point. It is a foot knock though, so somebody stood on his foot, haven't they? Who was it? Own up.
Yeah, I think you have to look at the fixtures and think, you know what, Middlesbrough's a bigger game. Middlesbrough's a game when it's more in the balance, and you're probably going to need someone like Firpo. Also, Vober has already played 60 odd minutes against Borough this season and was not at it. So let's not expect. Let's not keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
Yeah,
which you could say is the Leeds United hierarchy's approach to signing a number 10. Right? This will do. Seems to be the message, doesn't it?
Yeah, interesting. So previously, take it right back to the end of the summer. Farke himself highlighted the lack of a natural number 10. The Diego Maradona that he didn't have.
Sorry, did you just say Diego Maradona?
Yeah, that's what he said.
You look at that.
For the benefit of those listening and not watching, Joe is holding up a Maradona bobblehead that he just so happened to have sat next to him. Yep. Of course he did. So the only Maradona that Farke's had this season might be a bobblehead in his office because he hasn't got one in the team. He hasn't got that in the squad. So the natural, I guess, thought would be, well, January's coming up, Daniel. Aren't you pushing to get one now? Are you asking for one? Are you banging down the door and saying, come on, Alex Davies, find me one, please? But when I asked him today, he sounded quite satisfied, quite settled with what he's got.
He did. I took that as, he didn't rule anything out because he says you can never rule anything out, which is just the most, I'm not even going to give my opinion on how wishy-washy that is.
He is right.
He is right, but it's like, just give us something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he made it sound like it would be Rothwell. I think probably Rothwell or Tanaka who'd be moving up into a more advanced role when Ampadu's back in the team. He said it's all connected. And he is right again, but it's not what you want, is it?
It's not. I like the idea of Tanaka or Rothwell getting a go there because we haven't seen it, and it would be interesting to see what it's like. Aronson at the minute needs a break for me. That game against Blackburn looked like a game too many, and the goal contributions have dried up. He hasn't been great in his last few games. Form has dipped, and it was a physical game. It's not his forte, is it? It's not his wheelhouse, as they might say, stateside. But he's there still as an option, and he runs a lot. He works hard, but someone with a bit more craft and guile, like a Tanaka in that role, is definitely worth looking at, because Tanaka is a very forward-thinking player. He can pick a lovely pass. He loves to try and shoot from distance. I wouldn't be against it at all. And he'd definitely help with the press because he's got a tremendous engine on him and he can tackle. So I don't hate it. But, it'd be so much sexier if they just went and got a 10, wouldn't it?
It would.
So much more exciting.
And that's why for next week's newsletter, for anyone who didn't see the tweet or the post I put out on Twitter and Blue Sky, because Graham's decided that, he doesn't quite fancy working this Christmas, I'll be taking care of the Inside Ellen Road newsletter next week. And the idea that we've rutted our heads together. Obviously, mine was a little bit more cushioned than Graham's by, the bushy top that I have there. We put our heads together and came up with Operation Pablo, which is essentially looking at what Graham would probably like to say, and I'm going to say it before he does, is putting my European football nerdery to the test. He's there. There he is. He's nodding. He's nodding along to see if there are attainable, realistic options out there that Leeds could pursue and probably should take a look at ahead of the January window. That, you know what, they probably have already taken a look at some of them, and for reasons unbeknownst to me, they've probably said no. But that's not going to stop me anyway. I'm going to do it, and you're going to read it if you're a subscriber, and you're going to like it. I already have my list, as Graham knows, or I've got the makings of a list. Might have to whittle down one or two names, but I've got my list, and I know who I'm pitching to Leeds, and who knows, it might be another repeat of the Ramazani situation.
It might. I just figured you've got this perversion, and we should monetize it. So that's what I thought. You know, we once tasked John McKenzie, who's at The Athletic now, but was at Analytics FC, to come up with a list of left backs that Leeds should look at that summer when they signed Firpo. And because he set his parameters for affordability at, like, I don't know, 10 million or something, he discounted Firpo, but Firpo was in his list. And I remember there being like an element of celebration when someone from the club rang me to say, "Oh, I was reading your piece with John McKenzie to see if he'd come up with our left back," because it was that summer when they were looking at various players. Gavilan, was he one? And they were looking at various left backs, but no one had got the name yet until it came out that it was Firpo at the very. In fact, that might not even have come out until the announcement. I can't recall exactly, but the annoying thing was that Firpo was identified in his list, but was in the long list rather than the short list because he thought, you know, they wouldn't spend more than 10 million on him, which of course they did. And then, yeah, you had your Ramazani, bolt from the blue. Your suggestion that Leeds took very seriously, having listened to the Inside Ellen Road podcast. So maybe we discuss your list next week on the Inside Ellen Road podcast. They take another of your suggestions very seriously and they sign one of them.
No, we'll not be discussing it because it's subscribers only.
We'll discuss it a little bit. You'll give us one or two names on the podcast.
Well, what I'm planning on doing is sort of like a 12 Days of Christmas with it. But it's not till Christmas. It's the 12, I don't know, the X number of players. I'm not saying how many there is. I'm not telling you how long my shortlist is. Wouldn't you like to know?
I bet it is a short list, though.
There we go. Knew it. Yeah. Just call off the whole pod. That's it. Actually, just on the topic of falsehoods that you've decided to peddle. Last week, one of the subscribers who got the bonus episode of the podcast was looking and was watching it and said, "That's an awfully big backdrop behind Joe. That's blank, almost like it's fit for a borough flag." Well. And also, this person, you know who you are. Very, very astute observation. I would like to stress yet again, though, the team I support is not Middlesbrough, especially given that they are coming to Ellen Road in like 5 days.
Yeah, the Joe Donahue Derby is what we're calling it.
It's absolutely not that, and that is not what we're calling it. I am a very open and transparent person. If somebody gets it right, for example, I'm not going to tell them a lie. But I'm not going to go out there and volunteer it. Anyway, where was I? I've completely lost myself.
You're talking about your shortlist. You've got your shortlist. You're going to do the 12 Days of Christmas. So on the 10th day of Christmas, Adam Underwood gave to me.
Very good. Yeah.
X.
Another partridge. No. So what I'm going to do is every couple of days after the newsletter goes live, I'll sort of release another name and sort of a brief explanation of why that player's on the list, keeping it in the same sort of thread. But obviously, all subscribers to the Inside Ellen Road newsletter, they will get all of the names at once.
Excellent.
So, yeah, just as a way of getting it out there into the open, just in case they do actually do a 10 in January, and then I can point and wave it in your face.
Assuming that the 10 that they get, if they get one, was on your list.
Well, of course, yeah. But if he wasn't on the list and he turns out to be an absolute star, then we will never ever speak of Operation Pablo again. Right? It'll be redacted heavily, and it'll be filed under the Official Secrets Act.
Yeah.
And believe me, you don't want to go and ask me if I've got that power.
Have you got that power?
Well, if you knew, I'd have to kill you.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Yeah, that'll be good. That'll be good next week. The subscribers will be looking forward to that. Yeah, good. Well done.
What was your Spotify rap this year, Graham?
Just the usual.
Go on, tell people what the usual is.
Do they care?
They might do, yeah. I mean, you sent it to me. I certainly didn't care, but other people might.
I just wanted to show you how many minutes I had and compare it to yours.
Well, yeah, I was listening to more minutes, as I probably should. And hey, you never know. There might be a listener out there who has a very, very similar, listening profile to you.
Stop trying to set me up with people like I need friends. That's not what we're doing with this podcast.
That's absolutely not what the angle I was going for. But clearly, you need to get out of the house more.
So you want top artists, do you? Or, yeah. Top artists.
Yeah.
Sleep Token, While She Sleeps, Bring Me the Horizon, Vola, and Earthside.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're bands. Not too familiar with them myself. You need
to broaden your horizons, young man.
Why don't you bring me the horizons then? I'm not gonna share my personal one, actually.
What? Are you joking?
No, I'm not going to share my personal one. Although what I will say is, for those who've done the Spotify Wrapped, they will know that it sort of describes what your listening profile was for like a certain month. And for April, I don't know how it got to this. I don't know why it's described as this, but apparently April was my Goblin Core Beats Lo-Fi season. What the hell is that? And also, what on earth was going on in April that made me listen to Goblin Core? No idea.
Yeah, probably goes hand in hand with a European football perversion, doesn't it? It probably and a mustache.
And we're gonna stop calling it a perversion, and you're gonna stop commenting on my appearance because I'm just trying to help you out here. What I can do and share with the listeners, because they have all contributed to this, is the Spotify Wrapped for the Inside Ellen Road podcast, which was we gained 11% more listeners this year, which was nice.
Nice.
Thank you for that. If you're one of the newbies, 50% more streams. Don't know what that is, but no. I think it's to do with the length of time that people listen for. So people are tuning in for longer, which is good because clearly my things to work on for Graham, which was don't be so monotone over the summer. That was a bit of advice that was heeded quite nicely. And our followers on Spotify have increased by 22%. So you've all contributed to that. So thank you very much. 35% of our listeners discovered us this year. So it's a growing group, and there were quite a significant number of you who were whose number one podcast was the Inside Ellen Road podcast. So really, really big thanks for that, because I was not expecting, given the wealth of Leeds podcasts out there, to have so many of you, or rather to be the number one for so many of you. I just hope that one day I can be Graham's number one, but we can live in hope.
I've always been a massive Adam Pope fan. What can I say?
Yeah. Okay. Well, what's it going to take for me to be number one? Really? I thought once Phil left that I thought I'd be in the run to be on number one there, Graham, but it just turns out it's not the case.
Yeah, I don't know. You've got a very number two energy about you. You bring a certain number two energy to the table.
Shite.
You said it, son. You said it.
After you mentioned the phrase Rothwell Howitzer on last week's podcast, an account has been set up, or at least an account has been changed to reflect that turn of phrase on Twitter, or it might be Blue Sky, I can't remember. And it has been tweeting us. So if you are the owner of the Rothwell Howitzer account, fear not, we have noticed you. But just come on, maybe up your game a little bit. No, I'm joking. When that does happen, we'll celebrate with you. But for the time being, we're just going to have to keep you at arm's length. What else do you make of the Rothwell Howitzer stuff, Graham? Because you have seen it as well. I know you have.
I like it. I like the idea of Joe Rothwell pointing at stuff until he scores a howitzer. I'm excited to see what comes then. Does the account retire then? Does it move on to something else? Maybe it'll be focusing then on Tanaka and his first goal for Leeds. I am surprised that neither have scored yet. Are you? I mean, Leeds brought
given how well the goals have been spread around, I am surprised a little bit.
And Leeds brought them both in with the express intention of giving the midfield a more attacking profile and getting more goals and assists from midfield. But that hasn't really happened yet, other than Rothwell's set pieces.
I'd say that's maybe to do with the circumstances. I think we might see a change in that when Ampadu returns to the team, because he's going to provide that security, which then gives license to the other lads to go forward a little bit, whoever's partnering him, or if it's both of them and one of them's playing as a 10.
Yeah, I agree.
Should we do predictions, or do you want to do predictions last on the list?
Do predictions last.
Okay. I think we're going to do predictions now then. No, I'm joking. Early kickoffs. Leeds have tended to struggle a little bit during early kickoffs. You've got the stat to hand, don't you?
I do. So in Daniel Farke's first 10 early kickoffs, his record was remarkable. 7 wins, 1 draw, just 2 defeats, which suggests that he was very good at getting a team motivated and ready. And they won a lot of those games handily, and they also scored the first goal in quite a lot of those games. In the last 9 early kickoffs, they have not won a single game. I think it's 5 draws, 4 defeats. And in those 4 defeats, I'm certain they've conceded the first goal every time. Which brings a couple of alarm bells to life for me. The fact that they haven't won an early kickoff since Plymouth away last February, and the fact that when they concede the first goal in these games, they don't tend to do very well. And it's been 3-1 nils and a 2-1, I think, the 4 defeats. You don't ever want your team to have a blueprint for failure, that other teams can seize upon. But it is the way with Farke's Leeds, or it has been the way, that when a team scores first, it gives them something to hold on to and defend and cling to, and then they just sit in, make it hard. Scoring the first goal is always absolutely massive for Leeds, but it feels like it's even more massive for some reason in the early kickoffs, and I can't quite put my finger on why that is.
Yeah, I mean, could it be the fact that the squad are quite literally taking the old adage, never back the early kickoff, quite too literally?
Maybe. Could it be an energy thing? Could it be a physical thing? We don't have the running data to hand or publicly available, but it would be interesting to see.
Some of us do, but we're not allowed to use it.
You should really stop creating backdoors into other people's databases. It's not on. I'd be really interested to see if there was any disparity between Leeds running data for 3 o'clock or evening kickoffs and the early kickoffs. It might just be entirely circumstantial and one of those silly runs, like the no goals from set pieces for 800 years.
Or no home draws in the cup for 1,000 years.
For 1,000 years, yeah. We should definitely come on to talk about that.
It's on the list, don't worry.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I don't like early kickoffs at all. I like 3 p.m. games.
What about kickoffs that you think are 12:30, but they're actually 1:30, so you get there really early?
When the worst possible time.
Did you beat Dopey there?
I did, by some time, which says a lot because he normally sleeps in the car park of Grinds the night before just to make sure he's not late. So he's got enough time to set up his equipment and swear at it.
We're going to get a message. We're going to get a message.
Definitely going to get a message. Yes, I have to admit that, look, there was a lot going on. I was going to Manchester. There was a lot of logistics involved. I had to get from Manchester to Blackburn. And I was in a taxi, pulled up at Ewood, and the taxi driver said, and I won't do the accent because I can't do a Blackburn accent. And he said, "What time's kickoff? 1:30, yeah?" And I went, No, 12:30. And he goes, "No, it's 1:30." I went, "I think it's 12:30." And he goes, "It's definitely 1:30, mate." And I went, "Okay, mate." And got out the taxi, got my phone out because I looked around and thought, hang on a minute, there's not very many people here.
It's so embarrassing.
Quick Google, and then I didn't want to look back at the taxi driver who was pulling away because I didn't want him to see my face.
All that would have topped that is if you'd maybe passive aggressively said in that sort of back and forth exchange something like, "I think I'd know." That is the only thing that would have topped that.
Well, I think it's my job to know. So, but I mean, that would be bad enough in itself if it wasn't for the fact that I got there early and it was Blackburn. It was Blackburn that I got to early, where the press food lived up to its billing. 2 out of 10 sandwich. That was it. Just a sandwich.
100% improvement on last year then.
It was just, not ideal, I'm afraid.
That taxi tale reminds me, actually. I was in Spain over the summer, and with a group of friends, and
I got friends, have you?
I do, yeah, more than you. And we were in a taxi on the way to wherever we were going, and on the way there was a little bit of traffic, and there were two routes, and one of them was going to take 20 minutes, the other was going to take 45, and we were on the road that was supposedly going to take 45 minutes. In the back of the taxi was me and another friend, and he leans across to me and sort of says, it's not quite hushed, but it's under his breath a little bit, but still loud enough for the driver to hear, something along the lines of, "I think he's taken us the long way." And without skipping a beat, this taxi driver, who, when we got in, had not spoken a word of English, so we thought, okay, looks like we're going to have to use our GCSE Spanish, even though I didn't do that. He looks through the what is it? Not the wing mirror, the
rear view mirror.
That's it. Yeah, the rear view mirror. Looks at my friend and just says, "Yeah, I know which way I'm going." Like that, without skipping a beat. If that was me, if it was me it had happened to, I'm not sure I ever would have recovered, or I'm not sure. I'd still be red now. But the fact that it happened to somebody else was extremely enjoyable. So that is exactly what that taxi experience, your taxi experience, reminds me of.
Yeah. I don't think I can ever show my face in Blackburn again. So next year, if there is a trip to Blackburn, I'll simply not make it out of shame.
Okay. Well, let's hope and hope and hope that we don't have to make a trip to Blackburn next year. And if we do, then John Eustace has done a fantastic job getting them promoted to the Premier League. The FA Cup, then, the third round draw. I do like the third round. Throws up some really interesting ties. What was it, Accrington Stanley a few years ago? When Rodrigo got injured, didn't need to play.
No. And then that Leeds fan did a worm on the pitch.
Yeah, that was for a Firpo goal, so I think that's completely justified.
Yeah.
And what was it? There was Crawley, but the less said about that, the better.
Yeah. Don't like to talk about that. Wasn't a good day.
Yeah, there's some good ties. Fulham in the cup, was that when Manor Solomon scored?
Yes. Arsenal away.
Same as it ever was.
Which was actually Bielsa's almost like I don't want to say a breakthrough. He broke through into the mainstream that night because people, the nation were like, bloody hell, Leeds are good. Leeds are doing well. And it was just what we already knew because we'd seen it every week. But Leeds gave Arsenal some real problems that night. They were great. Meslier was unbelievable with his feet. And it was a really interesting night. But I really like this draw this year. I really, really, really like this draw. It's a storyline. It's local. It's a disparity in levels. It's a team that I saw when they were a Conference North side. It's got a player in the team that I covered when he was at the Works Up Town scoring goals in the Northern Premier League in the Evo Stick. It's got a lot to like about this fixture. And I would dare say there's a lot of Leeds fans that have a bit of an affinity for Harrogate, either because they come from there or they've moved to there because they've done ever so well in their careers. Or they've won the lottery or inherited a great deal of money. So,
What's that on your shoulder? Can you check your shoulder for me?
Hang on a minute. I'm from the Gold Coast.
There's an enormous chip on your shoulder there.
I am not buying geographically to anyone in this region. No, it's a nice place. It's got a famous tea shop. It's got a team whose manager, I think, described them as softies this week, which caught my eye. The headline, at least. I didn't read the story, but the manager's been there for yonks. Like, he's been there. I went there when Works Up played them in a pre-season friendly. I think they were Conference North at the time, and he was there, Weaver, and he's still there now.
Yeah, isn't his dad the chairman?
Yes, but I'm a dad. I could easily see myself sacking one of my children. Easily. Very, very, very easily.
It doesn't surprise me, but
at the drop of a hat.
However, is it not easier to get a job like that if your dad is the chairman?
Yes, you could say that. But
I'm not saying that Simon Weaver hasn't done a fantastic job. He has to get them up the league. However, there's been it's how he got there in the first place. You know what I mean?
Okay. Well, I'll leave it to you to tell him that he's a Nepo baby when we have the press conference after the game. I'll say, Joe's got a question, Simon, and I'll point at you.
Yeah, and all you'll see, because I'm so fast and flighty, all you'll see is just the press room door opening and closing.
Yeah.
As I duck out.
Did you celebrate the draw? Did you celebrate the fact that we're not going to Crawley or the other end of the earth or anything like that? Or Arsenal?
I celebrated not going to Plymouth again.
Yes, amen. Amen, brother.
I celebrated not going to Blackburn.
I celebrated. God, can you even imagine early kickoff in January in Blackburn?
No. I celebrated not going to Stoke because Boxing Day in a hotel opposite the ground is going to be as enjoyable as it sounds. So I don't really want to do that twice in the space of a few weeks. I did kind of want a Premier League tie.
Did you? I think there's a lot of Premier League ties that would make me think, ugh, like Bournemouth away,
not Bournemouth,
or Brighton away, or Everton away. Like a lot of those games. I mean, they just.
Oh, I would have taken Everton.
Really? Well, because you think they beat them.
Well, that, and also, can you imagine Popey?
Yeah, I've seen him at Goodison in action, and he's a modicum of neutrality.
I know, but we have obviously the benefit of chatting to him before and after the game. We don't have to. Fortunately, we don't have to listen to the to the commentary while the game's on. And it's fair to say that he might not be a modicum of neutrality before and after.
Yeah. And also, if Leeds won, then there would be tremendous mileage in giving him a bit of grief. Honestly, I think as draws go, it's a really good one. I'd give it 8 out of 10. I'd give it for interest, for ease, because of where it's going to be played, and also winnability. Leeds should win this game, and I'd be absolutely stunned if they didn't. I did say that when they went to Crawley. I've said this before, and it hasn't worked out, but I'd be stunned if they didn't. At home as well. They're very, very good at home.
Which of the fringe lads would you like to see play in that Harrogate game?
Not Joffy, because I want him out the door on January 1st or 2nd to go and play elsewhere. I'd like him to get a really good move fixed up.
It would also cup time as well, potentially. Well, no, it would. But if the club that he joins were English, it would cup time.
Yeah. I'd like him to be out the door already by that stage. So he's playing minutes and resurrecting his season and kickstarting things. Isaac Schmidt.
Yeah.
Isaac Schmidt, come on down. This is your game. Have I got a game for you, son? Harrogate Town at home in the FA Cup. If you can't trust Isaac Schmidt, then can you ever trust Isaac, or will Farke ever trust Isaac Schmidt if he won't trust him then? I mean, you might have an argument that maybe something will have happened with Firpo or Vober and they need the minutes, but ideally they'll need a rest and he'll get a game. Who would you like to see?
I would like to see Joshua Gilavogi, because I just think, against a League Two opposition, he should be far too good. And also just to see how capable he is of playing 90 minutes in a game which, let's be honest, there's not a great deal of jeopardy about it. So that if he's not up to code, then it's not the end of the world. But a Gilavogi Charlie Crew pairing in midfield would be fantastic. Although I imagine it won't be that. It'll probably be Ampadu coming back in. Although maybe, given that he's only just recently returned to the team and they'll want to manage his minutes quite carefully, Ampadu might be rested. Who knows?
Yeah. Let me throw another name at you. Harold Gray.
Oh, interesting.
Now we don't know for certain that he would be physically up to a game in the men's side of things, given that he's had a back complaint. But it'd be interesting, wouldn't it, if he managed to get a senior breakthrough this season? We haven't really talked about him much, and I know that that's partly due to the injury and partly by design, because there's no attempt being made to rush him, or there's no temptation to hype him. They're very, very protective, as they were with his big brother. But I really liked what I saw in pre-season from him. I thought that he was, he looked, given his age, he looked physically quite capable. And he also had some really nice little improvised finishes in the training games against senior. If you're back heeling goals against senior lads in training, against first teamers and against the first team goalkeeper, then you've got something about you. So if he was fit and recovered from his back injury, then that would be nice. But I think it unlikely.
Okay then. Predictions very quickly for Derby County this weekend.
Oh, Joe. I'm going to say 3-0 Leeds United.
3-0 does feel likely. I'm going to go with 2-1 though.
Okay.
I do think Derby get one from a set piece.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
First, if they get it, are they going to get it first, or Leeds going to score first?
No, Leeds go 2-0 up and then get one, and then they get one from a set piece.
Okay.
Although I would much prefer your 3-0. I just, given that, whole early kickoffs thing, the recent run, the Blackburn results, maybe being a few players being a little bit jaded. I also think he's going to start Joe Pirro again, and I wouldn't. But yeah, that's just me. I'm still yet to get one right on this podcast. So
you would start Joseph. Isn't it interesting that Bamford came on ahead of Joseph last week?
It is, but then it isn't. Like, he's back. It's what Farke said this week. He's back training. Bamford's obviously been 3-4 weeks without like any sort of little knock. Just throw him a bone, see what he does.
Yeah. I just don't see any confidence in Joseph's game right now. I just see
until he gets a goal.
Until he gets a goal, yeah. The team that I would play: Melier, Bogle, Firpo if fit, Vober if not, Rodon and Strike, Tanaka, Rothwell, James, Nyonto, Aronson, Peru.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give you that.
But I'm playing Aronson because I almost have to. I mean, I know that people say put Ramazani or put Nyonto there. I do like it, but I don't know that Ramazani is ready to start just yet. Maybe he is after a full week of training, after those couple of little cameos. Maybe he is ready to start. I don't mind the idea of Nyonto there, but the team that I think he'll go with is more likely to be Aronson at 10, Peru at 9.
Yeah, it should be a prediction of what we think Daniel Farke will do, not what we want to see. Because if that was the case, then Carl Darlow would be in goal for my team. Anyway, that has been everything on this week's episode of the Inside Ellen Road podcast. Thank you for tuning in, as always. Thank you for giving us a nice little Spotify Wrapped just in time for Christmas for me to peruse and ponder. And again, yeah, thank you for your prolonged and continued support. Graham, would you like to extend your well wishes to the listeners?
Yes, I wish you well.
There we go. The YAP's own Dwight Schrute. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.